Formula 1 is often described as the pinnacle of motorsport, with regards to both the cars and the drivers. While most of these cars are designed following principles learned from the generations of the cars that came before them, there are a select few who deviate from this path and create some properly weird creations. Some of the most famous examples of this are cars like the Tyrrell P34, the six-wheeler that competed in 1976 and 1977. Or perhaps your mind jumps to the Brabham BT4 6B fan car, which won the Swedish Grand Prix in 1978. While both of these cars are great examples on weird and wonderful spirit in Formula 1, they're not the only examples. In the 70s, Formula 1 was a far cry from the professionalism that teams offer now. You could build your chassis in a shed, you could buy a Hewland gearbox and a Cosworth DFV off the shelf and go racing at the next Grand Prix. This made Japanese engineers Kenji Momura and Masao Ono, both aged 26 years old, think to themselves, how hard can it be to build a Formula 1 car? And they subsequently created Maki engineering team. To help drive this new effort, they were after an experienced driver to help propel the team to success. They contacted experienced New Zealander Howden Ganley, who was out of a drive for the 1974 season after driving for BRM and Williams. For some strange reason, both Kenji Momura and Masao Ono decided to introduce themselves to their new driver as Mr. Togo and Mr. Yamamoto, with Ganley only later finding out that it wasn't their real names and it was in fact the names of the two plotters behind the Pearl Harbor attacks. Anyway, Ganley was sceptical at first on the project, but with his 1974 seat at March looking increasingly at risk, he entertained them. The two engineers told Ganley they had 4 chassis ready, 7 mechanics and a transporter ready to go. They built one car in Japan and shipped the parts over to Ganley's own personal workshop in Britain to construct the second. When Ganley questioned the strange look of the car, Masao Ono, who was in charge of the bodywork, simply put it was down to aerodynamic research, but some people speculated later on they just designed it because they thought it looked quick. After they built up a test car, Ganley went for some testing at Silverstone and Goodwood. They began tweaking the car and preparing for its debut race. However, as the season started, the first 4 Grand Prix of the year came and went without a single Maki car entering or lining up on the grid. Ganley was starting to get a bit annoyed at the team, but they had agreed they would definitely enter the British Grand Prix that year at Brands Hatch. Unfortunately for Ganley, the first day of testing at Brands Hatch comes and the Maki team was nowhere in sight. However, Maki then appeared at the end of the first day, ready to go on day 2 of qualifying. The car failed to qualify, but Ganley was still convinced there was a glimmer of hope for the Maki team and their car. The next round came at the Nürburgring, where Ganley got in the car again, did some sighting laps of the smaller loop to shake the car down, and was feeling more confident in the car after a few tweaks. He then set out on his first lap on the full Nordschleife loop, but for Ganley about a mile into the track, the wheel fell off, sending him into the barrier, ripping the front end off of the car and breaking both of his legs in the accident. While this should be the end of the story of Maki and Ganley, it wasn't the last he heard of them, as they then tried to sue him for not appearing at the next round in Austria while he was in his hospital bed, recovering from the previous accident. While Maki did return to Formula 1 the next year, their time was up. Their car never qualified for a Grand Prix out of the 5 attempts in 1975, and one final attempt in 1976. It marked the end of the mysterious Japanese team in Formula 1, closing a rather bizarre chapter of their history. With Tyrrell racing their now infamous P34 in the 1976 season, this car demonstrated the clear potential in its first season, scoring a 1-2 finish at the Swedish Grand Prix, and most of the other teams looking on, taking note of these results and starting to investigate the possibilities of their own six-wheeled cars. One of these teams was March. Tyrrell designed their P34 around the basis of reducing the front tyre size for aerodynamic benefit, hence why they ran such small front tyres. Designer for March though, Robin Hurd, believed that the front wheels was negligible gain, believing that the rear tyres is where the gains would be. He also believed that having multiple wheels for a drive could be much more useful than multiple wheels for the steering. Hurd then got to work designing a 6-wheeled car with all the wheels the size of a standard 16-inch diameter. His thinking behind it would be with all the wheels the same size, the car would have a slimmer profile and allow for a much smoother airflow over the rear wing. Along with this, having 4 driven wheels would promote far better traction out of a corner. Another problem the Tyrrell P34 struggled with was tyre development. They had Michelin manufacturer specially designed tyres just to fit the small front wheels, and this stunted them later on in the season as the standard tyres development caught up with them, and Michelin struggled to develop their special tyres at the same rate. March wouldn't have this problem however, as they were going to use all standard tyres on their 6-wheeler. Robin Herd proposed the idea to Max Mosley, yes, that Max Mosley, who gave the go-ahead to produce a prototype. In Mosley's mind, he saw the Tyrrell P34 6-wheeler as a brilliant marketing move, bringing in large attention and sponsors. March, being in a bit of a financial dip at the time, would find it an excellent opportunity to sell sponsorship packages to new backers. A vital feature of this new car would be a new trick gearbox that would allow all 4 rear wheels to be powered. However, this gearbox would need to be heavier and stronger than any gearbox they'd have built before. Robin Herd designed the casing with extra ribs and strengthening, but at some point in the development of the car it was decided it would be too costly and too complex, so some of the strengthening was taken out, and you can probably see where this is already heading. With the car partially built, March invited some journalists to the factory to promote their new concept and to try and draw up some interest. It proved a big success, with articles in loads of motorsport magazines around the world and a front page feature on Autosport. The car first saw track action in late 1976 around Silverstone, but on its first lap the gearbox casing flexed, turning the car back into a traditional 2-wheel drive Formula 1 car. Luckily for the team, it was a wet day, so the driver, Howden Ganley, yes, the same Howden Ganley, wasn't pushing the car too hard, but they drove just enough laps for the media to report the day a success. The downside of the day for March though proved the gearbox issues showed the intense development and funding the programme needed to be a success. March, with limited resources at the time, were then forced to put the project on the back burner. The car was still being developed behind the scenes, and then in February 1977 the car was out for another round of testing with an improved gearbox. Ian Scheckter, brother to Jody Scheckter, reported that the car had incredible traction in wet conditions. Unfortunately for the March 240 though, it still required a large amount of development and big funding to get it into a race-ready state, marking the end of the 6-wheeled programme for March. Luckily, while the 240 was being developed, they had been updating the previous year's 4-wheeled car as a just-in-case backup, which proved to be the right move, giving them a car to race for 1977. While the development programme for March might have ended, it wasn't the final outing for the 240, as 2-time British hill climb champion Roy Lane bought a March 771 and with Robin Herd's blessing was able to buy the gearbox to turn it into a 6-wheeler. The car gave him success, but the underlying reliability issues were still there, so after competing with the car for a year, he then turned the car back into a standard 4-wheeled car. It's worth noting as well, maybe for a future video, that Williams also tested a very similar 6-wheeled car with this concept. Continuing the theme of strange 6-wheeled cars in Formula 1, perhaps the least known of the bunch was the Ferrari 312 T6. While 6-wheeled cars weren't unheard of prior to Tyrrell, it was Tyrrell that flipped it around. The previous examples of 6 wheels hailed from the 1930s hill climb cars, such as the ERA R11B and the 6-wheeled Auto Union Type C, these having 2 wheels side by side on the rear driven axle to provide better traction. While other teams during the 1976 season were eyeing up Tyrrell and March starting to develop their answer to the 6-wheeler, there were rumours that Ferrari was going to do the same. Whether that was to drum up potential promotional interest, nobody was certain, but it wouldn't be until 3 months later that the rumours would be confirmed to be true. It was seen in Fiorano that Niki Lauda was testing a standard Ferrari 312 T2. Ferrari's public relation officers then went over to the journalists and photographers after the test had ended and requested they wouldn't take any more photos from then on. As unknown to them, Ferrari were about to unveil their new experimental 6-wheeler. While a few photos leaked from the test, it proved to be a good indicator for the Ferrari to continue the programme. However, what separated this 6-wheelers from the others wasn't an extra axle, it was the lack of it. Ferrari having put 4 wheels on the one rear axle. This bewildered journalists and sent conspiracy theories whirling, with people suggesting they were going to come up with a new trick differential to power the wheels independently of one another, and so on. Ferrari, after the secret Fiorano debut test, then set out a date to take the car to the famed Nardo Ring, Fiat property at the time, to test the six-wheeler even further in its first official outing. During the test at the Nardo Ring, Niki Lauda managed to reach the top speed of 186 miles an hour, an impressive speed, and when asked about it, he was optimistic but sceptical of the timeline of the project, suggesting it would be aiming for the 1978 season. The car was looking hopeful in testing, with big advantages being found, similar to March and Tyrrell. However, on the other end of the spectrum, they found some inherent flaws with the 312 T6. The major one being the added weight of another set of wheels, which was proving to be a bit of an Achilles heel to the project. Another major aspect of the 312 T6 which loomed over it was the maximum width restriction placed on Formula 1 cars at the time, which the car had exceeded. The team redesigned the whole rear axle, but it only introduced more problems to the already complicated design. However, by far the largest problem that faced the 312 T6 was the tyres. As with the case in the Tyrrell P34, it proved to be a huge part of the success and the downfall of the car. For testing, they could use a standard set of front tyres on the rear, but they found it difficult for anyone to help develop the specialist tyres needed. Despite the challenges that faced the programme, Ferrari was still openly testing and developing the concept, letting Carlos Reutemann test the car for the first time later in 1977. While Niki Lauda displayed optimism for the concept, Reutemann was not so keen, saying the car had big problems, describing the car as a fright and far from good. He continued testing the car for the day before he eventually pushed too hard and found him and the car in a barrier. While the Ferrari 312 T6 was being developed behind the scenes in the 1977 season, the standard four-wheel version of the car, the 312 T2, was showing itself to be a winner anyway, with Niki Lauda winning the championship that year, causing Ferrari to reconsider if they even needed to develop this six-wheeled contraption when their regular four-wheeled car is proving to be better in most measurable ways. The car had a few more tests after the Carlos Reutemann crash, but after that, Enzo Ferrari said they would not continue with the project and it was going to be cancelled. They couldn't seem to get Goodyear on board with them to work with the tyres, not that I don't think that really mattered anyway, as the whole time the programme was going on, the car was illegal as per FIA rules of the width restriction, and the FIA then shortly banned six-wheels cars from competing in Formula 1 altogether. The cars I spoke about in this video weren't competitive, or were lacking in most areas really. It demonstrates what made Formula 1 so brilliant in the 1970s. The rapid development of these totally obscene, unproven philosophies in an attempt to one-up everyone on the grid. Rather than in modern Formula 1 where you have an innovation that gets ruled out by regulation, it was people trying to better others at their own game. This helped to not only develop the cars, but the sport and the technology with it.